Welcome to Black Angus Reviews. In this follow-up to my thoughts on episode 5, The Bells, I want to attempt to offer some positive takes on what this episode reflects on the show as a whole. We may disagree, but despite my negative critical take, I disdain blind hate and unwillingness to try and discern something good from a bad production. I won't be going against or contradicting my last video, but simply interpreting it in conjunction with the show and perhaps giving perspective on what was meant to be displayed. I'm a big fan of this show. Clearly, I, like most, have a problem with this season, mainly the buildup of the undead and the Night King, and the delivery. 13 episodes ending a show Martin said should have had about 10 seasons. Prior to season 8, my only problem with Benioff and Weiss as creatives in the show was that odd plot between Sansa and Arya. It felt out of left field and contrived, trying to build on the past childish division between them that wouldn't make sense after what they've been through. With that, hopefully you understand me a bit more as a Game of Thrones fan. Now let's move on to why we're all here. Salvaging meaning after the infamous bells. George R.R. Martin said something profoundly thought-provoking, that being that even in the realm of fiction, authors should try to present some truth in their work. In his Game of Thrones, one of many truths I think are present in the series is that all men must die. In high fantasy, that perception and course of thought feels like an antithetical theme to the masterworks of Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, an inspirational work with lots of Christian themes and symbology. When thinking on that and comparing it to The Last Jedi, we see one writer perhaps rendering a series pointless, while Martin has taken a nihilist view and made an intriguing universe where no one is safe. Despite the dreadful delivery of the bells and my criticism of it, I've had this nagging feeling that many truths Martin is attempting to present are in fact still present in what's unfolded prior to the end in episode 6. The key thing people are upset about in the bells is the sudden shift of Daenerys. After rendering all prepared defenses utterly useless, the bells of surrender are rang, yet Daenerys commences to burning the whole city full of civilians. The hints and breadcrumbs have been there the whole time. A turn to madness like the Mad King and others before her wouldn't be a surprise, but the callousness and lack of build-up makes it unbelievable to this point. How can a woman who prides herself on breaking the chains of slavery and destroying those who maintain a system of oppression become, as Diversity and Cecil puts it, Dragon Hitler? I'll attempt to play devil's advocate and explain. Daenerys was a girl born an outcast, her ruling family reduced to a small retinue of loyalists and her brother and herself. She was a customary bargaining chip in use of an alliance struck through marriage in exchange for a fighting force. After her husband's demise, she was worse off than before, and now a mother who had miscarried a rival heir to the new warlord, but also the mother of once thought to be extinct dragons. Slowly, she accrued wealth and a new populace loyal to her through conquest and freedom from a previous way of life, but always at a cost. When she finally assembles the proper sized invading force to retake her birthright in the Iron Throne, she succumbs to delaying that task and prepares to defend Westeros from the looming threat of an all-encompassing death. Assuming that by doing so, she'd win the loyalty of the people, saving them from the undead and rectifying her family's sullied name. But she underestimated the people's lack of desire to change. Despite being mostly well-received in Essos, Westeros is a completely different culture. While a queen regent can reign in the interim, they will always expect to follow a king. Not only does she realize Jon is the more legitimate heir to the throne, but Westeros knows this man. Half the Seven Realms are already following him, and learning this reality will likely cause another civil war, if not worse. Despite all she has done for Westeros, she's a foreigner they never wanted with a tainted name they'd sooner forget. Despite all her ideals, her drive to break the wheel that drives all the chaos that comes from the mechanizations of a few important men, like a fire cleansing the forest, perhaps the only real way to change the world, is to burn all that remains of the old ways. With episode 6 still to come, our perceptions may change, but in the meantime, it looks like Daenerys is playing the old phrase come to life, and power corrupts. But given how Martin writes, and how the show has progressed with a general outline, I don't think that will be the case. I see the words of Cersei echoed in what Daenerys has done. Power is power. Game of Thrones is famous not just for the sex and violence and intrigue, but for taking fantasy tropes and turning them on their heads, much like No Country for Old Men. Heroism, ethics, and perceived morality being no guarantee for a good outcome. A theme I take away from the show overall, and in this episode, is that power goes to those who both have that power, be it money, armies, or dragons, and also the will to act on it. Despite various rulers having come to be loved by their people, they still rule in the end via fear of the might and punishment they can exact on those beneath them. We see that in reality. If you're a nation starving, you may come to love, or at least accept, those in charge if they simply keep yours and your family's bellies full. You don't really question where the food comes from. The other story thread I feel says a lot about the series is Jon Snow. Through the show, we learn of the noble lie preserved by Ned Stark to save his nephew, the one staying on his pious name. Through a chance reading by Sam and a vision of history by Bran, we learn the truth. He is the last male heir to the throne in the Targaryen line. Ned took upon himself one lie and let his friend take control of the realm, a drunk forever doomed to drown his sorrows at the loss of his love who never was. The Targaryen reign was taken down after one too many atrocities, one namely being the slaughter of Ned's brother and father. Good men who did nothing allowed a mad king to slaughter his own subjects. Ultimately, he was undone by a man pledged to his service for life, trading honor for the life of his father. It's ironic on a grand scale that Ned could look at Jaime in such disdain, clearly not knowing the full context, yet turned over the Iron Throne to his friend Robert Baratheon, enabling him at cost of the people. Eventually, this irony comes full circle to Jon. So far, he's enabled and serves a queen gone mad. Knowing the demise of his uncle and grandfather, he's become what he's always had a personal and inherited drive to go against. A good man come to inaction, at least prior to the show's end, all at the cost of the people. Daenerys, fulfilling the last words of the Mad King, burned them all. If unchecked and left free to rule Westeros, perhaps Dany will in fact bring an era of peace unseen in Westeros, but at what cost? Ultimately, we may see a lesson in the victor dictating the histories, and in that, the cost that one group's peace and prosperity comes at. In reality, there are no good rulers, only those who maintain power and in some way subjugate all subjects. The fact that there is a need of someone to rule and deal out punishment says something about all of us. That to live amongst each other entails that there in fact is no true peace to be had at all. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. If you'd like to support this channel, consider becoming a patron or buying store merch from the Teespring store. Don't forget to check out the growing list of friends in the Fandom Collective in the description below, and follow me on Twitter @AngusReviews. See you there.